This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie Sherman, a good Sunday morning.
What's really good about this Sunday morning is we get to talk with the icon of radio in all of Montana, Peter Christian. You know, every one of our listeners knows who Peter is. Every
Right.
Grizz fan knows who Peter is. Everyone in Missoula knows who Peter is. 25 times he's won, awards for being the best journalist in the state. I mean, the guy is unprecedented in his background and history. I mean, he's been on the air for 20-something years on Town Square and had a media career even before that. And we get to have him on the other side of the studio today and talk to him about his 50 years. You're getting ready to MC a show,
Right?
An event that will celebrate 50 years of Peter's broadcasting career. And also, importantly, the proceeds from the event go to who?
Oh, yeah, Fight Crime Investing Kids, a charity that was brought to us by the county DA, Kirsten Pabst.
Yeah. So even when he's celebrating his life, there's a charitable end to it.
Two areas that are two areas of passion for Peter: children and families, and fighting crime, law enforcement.
Hopefully, it's not fighting children and enforcing parents or something like that. No, Peter's great, and I've there are questions I've always wanted to ask Peter.
Oh no!
Yes, and I'm going to do it on this show today.
Oh, this is exciting, everybody! This is a tune-in moment. This is a moment where now the griller becomes the grill master.
Well,
right?
He very rarely exposes most of himself on the air. All these years on Talkback and the other shows and writing, pieces for the news, is very little Peter. He holds himself back. So this is the show where we find out about the man, the legend,
who's the real
Peter Christian.
Right. Who's the real Peter Christian? We are celebrating Peter Christian's 50 years in broadcasting. And by the time this airs, it'll already have happened at the Hilton Garden Inn. And Arnie, you'll be there with me.
Yes, be there Thursday night.
But let's talk to the man, the myth, the legend about his storied career. And I think he's got more than 10 minutes of conversation to be had.
He certainly does.
All right, looking forward to it. Back after this with Peter Christian. Okay, Arnie Sherman, we are back with our guest, the inimitable,
the one and only
Peter Christian.
We told the audience we were going to have the most well-known broadcaster, and I didn't say to them it isn't Ron Burgundy. So if those of you want to stop listening now, we do not have Ron Burgundy, but we have someone better, Peter Christian.
Oh, gentlemen, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
50 years. Doesn't it seem like 100?
Well, to be honest with you, I was just talking this over with some friends of mine, and they said, how? Well, basically, just went like that. I mean, it's like I woke up one morning and I started work at my first radio station, and then this morning I woke up and came here, and it's like all the years in between just...
I could tell we're in the same age bracket. I understand that. It's sort of like the old question: how does the elephant get eaten by the ant?
Right.
One bite at a time. All of a sudden, one day at a time, and it's 50 years later.
Exactly.
So let's harken back. Let's get into the time machine. We're going to go back to 1973.
Mr. Wizard. Yes. Okay.
Richard Nixon was president.
Yes.
We were involved and engaged in the war in Vietnam.
Right.
And you started your radio career in Helena, Montana. Tell us what that felt like.
Well, I did. And I will tell you, just as a little backstory, I was in a rock and roll band called The Dark Side.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And now you got to remember, this is long before Darth Vader and Star Wars.
There was also a song called The Dark Side that was done by
The Shadows of Night.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a matter of, it was the flip side of Gloria.
Yeah.
And GLORI. Anyway, so my
which
bandmates,
was originally done by them which had what's his
Van
name?
Morrison.
Van Morrison is the lead singer.
There
anyway,
you go. Okay.
I digress.
Well, anyway, my bandmates were.
Where are you from, by the way? Where's all this happening?
I am a Marine brat. I was born in Hawaii, and my parents were both lifers in the Corps, and they got divorced. And make a long story short, we ended up moving from a beautiful split-level house in Bryn Mawr Park, Virginia, to living in my grandparents' basement in Helena.
Wow.
When I was
So they fought over
12.
you and your grandmother won.
No. But anyway, in Helena, I got to know Mike Knight, Tom Hansen, and Rick Pfeiffer, and they were all 2 years older than me. And I'm a drummer. Okay, not I was a drummer. I am a drummer. That is.
It's a life calling.
That is one of the identifying factors of who I am. I'm a percussionist. I'm a drummer. I love to play drums. I'm always pounding on things. I actually have in my car right now. I take it everywhere. A pair of drumsticks that were signed by J.K. Simmons.
Wow.
Nice.
And so in case I run across a random drum set in the middle of the road, I am ready.
So did
cool
you
is
like
that?
his version of that movie that he did playing the drums?
Let me tell you, he
I mean, he won an award for that
yes,
character.
he was Academy Award winner.
Yes.
And remember, he thanked his mom. He
Yes.
said, "Call your mom." Remember that?
Yes.
Anyway, but I got into this band, and I was like 14, and they were like 16, 17, 18. And so we got all this equipment together. We went to Hoffman Music in Spokane. We bought a bunch of custom amplifiers, the tuck and roll. I don't know if you ever saw the tuck and roll
sure.
Naugahyde.
Sure.
Anyway, so we bought a bunch of that stuff and a PA system, and I had a 1964 Ford Econoline van, and on the road we went.
To Spokane.
No, we went to Spokane to
Got
get
it.
to
I got
get
it.
the,
Then we're on the
get
road.
the equipment, and then we came home and we played at all the dances. I mean, in Havre and Hardin and Glasgow and Shelby and Miles City and Bozeman and everywhere.
Wait a minute, but you had so you're 14 and you're
Yes.
doing all this. That's
Yes.
pretty adventurous for
Were you
someone
just
that
a
young.
percussionist, or did you also join in singing?
I was a singer. I was the ooh ah guy.
Right, the UA guy in the background?
They wouldn't let me sing lead, but yeah.
Were any of your supervisors, your adult supervision, were they okay with this?
My mom was thrilled that I was making money. We made, because we were poor. I mean, we lived in a little itty bitty tiny trailer, and my mom was thrilled that. First of all, I not only did that, I also went to high school, and then I had a job after my high school day was over. I was a box boy at Buttree's, and became an apprentice stockman there, and all that kind of stuff. But all during this time, I'm playing rock and roll with my friends.
And when you listening to the radio, did you grow up listening to the radio?
Yes.
Okay, what stations were you listening to?
Well, that's just it. I really didn't start listening to the radio until I got to Helena, right? And I began getting into rock and roll and the Beatles. Of course, the Beatles were my first real exposure to what I figured real rock and roll. The British Invasion would happen. Dave Clark 5, the Kinks, all those things.
And were you listening to Ringo? Were you paying attention to how he played?
Absolutely. I Ginger Baker was one of my favorite drummers. Felix Pappalardi
Of the Young Rascals.
Young Rascals was
right.
another favorite that I tried to model my drumming
He was
after.
a good drummer, underrated, but a good drummer with the Rascals.
So anyway, I developed my own style. I had a double bass drum Ludwig drum set.
Ludwig.
Yeah, and
You saved up for that.
Yes, and I had a Gretsch stainless steel snare, 64 snare, and it was my baby. I never let it go out in the cold. It was in the car with me. I practically rocked it to sleep at night, and I was very, very serious about my drumming.
Was there somebody, a teacher or somebody
Yes.
at school that influenced you?
Yes, but when I was in junior high, my mother, who actually played in the U.S. Marine Corps band, she was a percussionist. She was a little tiny thing, about a little less than 5 feet tall, and her favorite memory was John Philip Sousa was in his over 100 years old and heard them play Stars and Stripes Forever. And he came down and patted my mother on the head.
Wow.
That's one memory I'll never.
That's a big deal for
Yeah, it's a very, very big deal. So anyway, there was a gentleman in Helena named Gene Brown, very legendary drum teacher. And my mother insisted that I learn classical drumming. With all the rudiments and the single stroke, double stroke roll, and 5-stroke, 7-stroke, 11-stroke, whatever, flams, flamadiddles, paradiddles, all that. And so I learned how to do all that by playing in the Missoula City Band with the gentleman who sold me my first drum set, Scratchy Clark, Clark Music.
Right.
So anyway, I have very, very deep roots in Helena, the Helena music scene.
And at 14, when you started playing on the road with this band,
Right.
they obviously gave you some solos here and there to bang away on, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And what was your favorite back then?
Obviously, when it finally came out, we'd been together for a couple of years, and Inagata Davida came out.
Oh, yeah.
Iron Butterfly.
Iron Butterfly. And as soon as I heard that drum solo,
Inagata Davida,
right,
baby.
which was supposed to be in the Garden of Eden,
I
but
know,
they were
he-
so stoned.
That's right. That's the story about it. It was supposed to be in the Garden of Eden. And he goes, in a Garden of Eden, baby.
Well,
Hey.
you know why this was a favorite track of radio programmers. You know why, don't you?
Why?
Because it's 24 minutes long.
Exactly.
They go to the bathroom.
It's a
and
bathroom
have
record.
lunch.
Or other things.
Yeah.
There were favorite bathroom records. Freebird was another one.
Yeah.
Anyway, MacArthur Park was a good one.
Oh, yeah.
So that's-
Richard
that-
Harris droning out on MacArthur
Yes,
Park.
yes.
So, Peter, that was a turning point for you.
Yes, it was, and I learned that entire drum solo from beginning to end. And here's how it would work. Okay,
Yep.
we would play, and we would play, and the Inagata Davida was the last song in like our second set.
Right.
And when I started my drum solo, I played about 15 minutes of drum solo.
Wow.
While my other bandmates were out getting something to drink and flirting with the girls, I'm up there
Banging away.
sweating my whatever off
Kishkas.
by doing this drum solo. And then of course when my drum solo was over, boop boop chick, boop boop chick, and boop boop chick, boop, and they come back running back on, and I'm okay. Let's keep going.
One more time.
So that was our deal.
So how did that intersect with getting on the air and being a DJ?
Okay, all right. I was at a crossroads because my bandmates obviously were older than me, and they graduated from high school and they went their various directions. They didn't want to stay doing the dark side. So basically, I just got serious about, I was going to become an apprentice stockman and all this kind of stuff. And my girlfriend at the time, a wonderful young lady, we were coming home from church group one night, and she said, you like music, right? I said, you're the rock music. I said, yeah. I said, well, we were listening to KCAP radio in Helena, 1340,
Right.
And they said, why don't you be a DJ? And I said, wow, I never even thought of that. So I got on the phone. Well, first of all, I was really nervous. I was going to go. I called Jim Schaefer, who, by the way, I still do commercials for.
No, I know. Under
50 years-
Christian Communications.
Yeah. Peter Christian Communications is my business, where
Right.
I do copywriting production. Anyway, the very first place I worked was at KCAP. Anyway, Jim Schaefer, he invited me to come in. He knew I had no training, I had no experience, but I said, look, I was a rock and roll drummer. I absolutely love the music that you play.
And how old are you now?
I'm 19. Okay, so I'm 19, and I called him up and said, hey, what do I need to do? He said, why don't you come on down Saturday morning and we'll set up a reel-to-reel tape recorder, right? And he gave me a copy, a couple of little news things, and he left the room, and I read them, right? And he came in, turned the tape off. He says, no, we'll call you if anything comes up. I said, oh, thank you. Whew, But the problem was, the night before, I was so nervous, I did not sleep a wink. And when you don't sleep a wink, you wake up with your voice like this.
Right.
It was really,
But did you have the golden pipes that you have today? Was the basis of it there already, or did you develop that over time?
The basis was there, but it was, of course, it was raw.
Right.
There was no training there at all.
I think of Frank Sinatra playing with, the early bands and how his voice was, basically there, but
Right.
higher
reedy.
and then how
Yeah.
it matured over time until, when he hit this.
Was that
peak.
you? Was that you, Peter?
I have no idea. Let's put I can't judge that. But anyway, he called me up. This was Saturday morning. Called me up Sunday night. He said, "Man, you got a really nice voice. I want to hire you. I have a full-time opening, midnight to 6." Okay.
Yeah.
Now, midnight to 6 at the #1 station in Helena at 19 with no training and no experience. Right.
Big deal.
And so I went in that first night. I was so nervous. The guy that trained me, a guy named Steve Sorkness, who was Dale Stevens on the radio, he trained me, right? And I was so nervous that I flicked that microphone switch and broke it, and it went all the way flying across the room. And Steve Sorkness said, "It's going to be a long night."
Do you remember what your salary was for this first?
Yes. I eventually. By the way, the first song I ever played.
Yes.
Was oh, come on, doggone it! It was right in the top of my head. 1973. Anyway, I'll think.
Three Dog Night.
No.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog?
No. Anyway, so we moved on, and I became the oldies director, right? And you got to remember, this is the time we're playing 45 RPM records on turntables with Q Burns and all that kind of stuff. And I had 2,400 oldies to catalog. That was my job. So I learned what every single name of every single song was, who wrote it, who produced it, how long it was, whether it had a fade end or a cold end, and how long, and most importantly, how long the intro was.
Right.
Because if the intro is 36 seconds, a radio announcer can do a weather forecast over the top of the beginning of the record. Right. Or you can do a public service announcement, or you can have a little a bit or a gag or whatever and talk it right up to the time when the vocals start.
Hit the post.
Yeah, exactly. Hit the post. So anyway, that's where my career started.
How did you choose? No secret to our listeners.
So luck and fate mixing together.
Yes,
right.
But how did he pick his radio name?
Okay, my radio name. My real name is not Peter Christian. Those of you who know me know that my real name is Wall, Wall, and my boss,
Wall Christian.
Yes, my boss Jim Schaefer said, "Look." And his words to me were, and I'll never forget this, if you don't want 12-year-olds calling you in the middle of the night requesting Seasons in the Sun at home, right, then you need to have an air name. Yes. And so I was active in my youth group and serious about my walk with God. And I said, well, how long am I going to be doing this? A couple of years maybe, right? Who knows? So I picked Peter Christian.
Right.
And so that's who I have been forever and ever since then. And
is that weird having a?
Yes, it's very weird
an
having
alias.
an air name.
Is it an alias or is it nom de plume? What is it?
A nom de air.
Nom de air. Yeah.
What's it like? Yeah, because people, everyone knows you as Peter Wall, but then now your listening public, your fans, your audience.
Exactly.
So how long did the Helena gig last?
The Helena gig lasted 2.5 years.
And then
I worked my way up from midnight to 6 to nights and then to afternoon drives, and then I was doing middays at KCAP, rapid rising star, right? Anyway, so I got
in the 70s, everybody was listening to radio.
Right. So I got a call from Vern Argo.
Oh yes.
Over here in Helena, over here in Missoula, which was engineer. I did not know this, but it was actually undertaken by Tom McGinley.
No.
Oh, really?
Tom McGinley, legendary engineer.
Engineer.
Right, exactly. And he convinced Vern to give me a call. And I was making, hang on, I was making $350 a month.
Wow. Just what you're making now. Yeah. So that was big money
get
back
him
then.
started, Arnie.
and
he's gonna ask for a raise.
Yeah, and Vern said, well, I can pay you $500 a month. I said, wow. So I jumped in my car.
Yes.
Off I went.
Wait
to
a minute.
Helena.
So we're talking 1975, 1976. When does Lorna?
I moved to Helena in 1976.
Okay.
In the centennial year or bicentennial year.
Right.
When do you meet your bride?
Okay. I met Lorna. Oh my goodness. I met Lorna. Yeah. This was amazing. Sorry. I met Lorna. It was the KYLT wedding fair. Okay, the KYLT wedding fair, and this was long before
we did it.
Z100 did the wedding fair, right?
Right.
So anyway, we did the wedding fair. I was wearing a powder blue tux. And I had the stash working, right?
Nice.
I had the killer stash going on.
Yeah, the flowered shirt, the ruffled shirt?
No, it was just a regular, it was a powder blue tux. So anyway, before that event, I was the MC. I did a lot of MCing. I emceed the Junior Miss pageant in Missoula. And because all the Junior Miss contestants had a talent, right?
Right.
It was my job to entertain the crowd in between. And so, because I'm not a great comedian or any of that kind of thing, so I had my guitar, and I knew how to play guitar and sing. So I sang a couple of Christian songs and whatever, just to fill the time, right? So anyway, at the wedding fair, a couple months later, Lorna was there with her sister Doreen, who was getting married. And they sat in the front row, and I looked at her, and I said, oh, my gosh, that's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, blah, 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 blah. And so she walked up to me during a break and said, Mr. Christian, because Lorna's voice.
Right.
Yeah. She says, Mr. Christian.
So sweet.
Mr. Christian. Nobody ever called me that before.
Right. You're looking over your shoulder.
Right, yeah.
Who's that guy?
Who are you talking to? So anyway, she says, I heard what you did at the Junior Miss pageant, and I love the Lord too, and all this kind of stuff. And so we began dating, and then in 1976 we got married.
That's beautiful.
And it's been a love story ever since.
It has been a love story ever since. We got 44 years coming up.
That's amazing.
So we got married in 1980.
Wow! So
okay.
So 4 years later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so it was a
They
long
met in the
courtship.
bicentennial.
Right.
They met in the bicentennial.
I got it.
So anyway,
So in all these years, I want to jump around a little bit. In all these years, can you point out 2 or 3 career-related highlights? I mean, you've broadcasted through all kinds of stuff. You started off, there was the Vietnam War, and we had a bunch of other wars since then. We had lots of presidents. We've had lots of commotions and lots of highs and lows. We had 9/11. We had all this, all this sort of stuff. What stands out to you?
Well, what stands out to me, a couple things. First of all, the day Elvis died, I remember I was working at KYLT at the time, and we had an AP machine or a UPI machine.
Right.
And
United Press International for our listeners?
Associated Press. Associated Press.
AP.
And UPI as well. And all of a sudden, I heard something I'd never heard before. I heard our AP machine ding 10 times.
Wow.
It had never dinged 10 times before, ever, in all the years that I've been working in radio, right? And it was the death of Elvis Presley.
Oh, my God. I remember where I was then.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of a big moment. And then when 9/11 occurred, I had just started. I was doing the Morning News Express on KGVO, right? And so we're all watching the Twin Towers and all that. And okay, let me just go back a little bit.
Sure.
When Mount St. Helens exploded, all right, it was 1980.
Yep.
Yeah.
My wife and I had just been married. We lived in a little house on 10th Street. And so we were playing. We played in the church softball league, so we were out playing catch, in the middle of the street in 10th Street. And I looked over to the west, and I said, "Oh my gosh, that's a big ass storm headed our way."
Wow!
I mean, look at that. I mean, it's like enormous. It's huge, and so this is long before the internet now,
right?
It's long before bulletins and that sort of thing. And then we heard Mount St. Helens had exploded. And the area was covered.
You saw it before you heard it.
The cover. We were covered with ash everywhere. Yeah. Nobody knew what to do. Right?
Amazing.
So your old fat dad, who was the morning guy at the time, whom I learned a lot from, your old fat dad called me up at 3 a.m. It said, "My doctor won't. I have asthma. My doctor will not let me go out in this stuff. So you are doing the morning show."
Oh my gosh.
I'd never done the morning show before, right? And so that was when Bill Schwanke, Grizzly Bill Schwanke, and Ray Nicolai, the news guy, legendary people in our business.
Right.
I had my very first opportunity to work together with them on the air. We did not play one single song from 6 o'clock that morning when we went on the air. We took phone calls. We talked with doctors. We talked with mechanics. We talked with builders. We talked with professors and all this. And it was the most incredible, electrifying feeling I've ever had on the radio. And I realized at that point, I'm all done with rock and roll, man.
Right,
I mean,
you're gonna
I'm all
focus
done
on
with
this.
playing music. I want to do talk.
What was it, Peter? Was it the notion that the idea that the community was getting together and you were helping to kind of orchestrate
Yes,
that?
we were facilitating. We were actually helping people live through an extraordinary event, and we were
In real time.
and we were helping them find ways to get things done. Don't do this, do this, don't do this, don't do this. And people were calling up, and doctors were calling in, and it was just we were Bill and Ray and I were on the air from 6 a.m, almost till 2 or 3 p.m, and we spent the whole day.
Right.
Talking about what was going on in our community.
Because it's not that long ago, but back in those days, if you wanted to research, what do I do when ask? You'd have to go to the library.
Yeah.
I mean,
You got to
there
get an
was no other way-
encyclopedia. You got to
there's
do
no other
something.
way. There's no other way to do it.
And we were calling people. We were calling people at the University of Montana. What should people do? I don't know. Should you wash your car? Should you not wash your car?
Right.
All that stuff.
Yeah,
So,
should you wear a mask? Should you,
Yeah,
even in
exactly.
your own house?
There weren't masks then, maybe not.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, so that was a particular moment.
that was a benchmark moment for me. I knew at that point I had to be in
So
talk
fast
radio.
forward to 9/11. So
Yeah.
with 9/11, you were saying
With 9/11, I was already doing the Morning News Express on KGVO, right?
right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a formatted show where we had newscasts and sportscasts and all that, and we threw that all that aside, and we opened up the phones and started talking to people. And people were calling, and it was absolutely, the word I think of is, it was cathartic. It was, people needed to talk about what was going on in New York City and Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
Right here in Missoula, Montana. They needed to know.
Sure.
You know, what,
I remember
So-
watching 9/11. Somebody called me and said, "Turn on your TV." They didn't
Right.
even tell me why.
Where were you, Arnie?
I was in Stevensville. at the
You were in
time.
you were in MT.
Yeah. And I turn on the TV, and I remember as they're talking about the building getting hit, another plane flies behind
Oh, my
the
God.
people talking and hits the building
Yeah.
in real life, real time. The guy turns around and says, "Oh my God!" It was happening like
What
I've
have
never
we
seen
here?
it before.
Let's do a quick ID, as if we need to ID this voice. Arnie and I are talking to Peter Christian, 50 years in broadcasting.
Yeah. So that's a landmark moment. But I want to back up just a little bit.
all right.
Those who don't listen to KGVO because they don't get up in the morning because they have night jobs or whatever know you from being the voice of the Grizz at the
Yes,
Grizz Stadium.
yes.
Everybody in
Now-
my sleep.
Every time somebody says that to me, I have to correct them, and I'll tell you why. Because my friend Mick Holeen
Oh, right.
Was the voice.
was the quote the voice of the Grizz for a long time,
Right.
and before that it was Bill Schwanke.
Right.
I'm very protective of that title
Right.
because that title is earned by the play-by-play guys.
That's true.
Right?
You're
And
right. You're right.
Because they're out there.
You're the voice of the
Riley
stadium.
and Sunburn.
I am the public address
Just
announcer.
announcer.
That's what I
How
am.
did that happen, though, Peter? How did that become your gig?
Well, my friend Denny Bedard,
Fellow Town Square
this
media?
is 1989. Came to me and said, "Hey, there's an opening for a public address announcer for the Grizz. Do you want? Would you like to do that?" I said, "Well, I mean, why not? You know?" And so I thought, let's do it. So I visited with Wayne Hogan, who at the time was the athletic
Right.
director, a wonderful man.
Great guy.
And so he said, "Okay, Peter, let's give it a shot." And so my first year, I was absolutely terrible.
Who did it before you?
I'm not sure who it was.
Okay, so it was the
Yeah, I didn't remember his name.
No,
But
no.
all I know is my first year, they were very, very patient with me because they knew I was going to make a lot of stupid mistakes, and I did.
Right.
And but as the second year, third year came along, we became there was more structure, there was more formatting to what we do, to where now it's 26 years later, right?
Yes.
This is my 26th year of doing it. I have an enormous notebook
Okay.
of things that I have to read, right? And with 26,000 people listening to every word I say, I have to get it right.
Sure.
Yes.
So I get there maybe 2 hours before kickoff, and before anybody else is in the little control room up there.
Right.
I'm up there. I've got my headphones on, and I've got that book open, and I am reading out loud every single word.
Wow.
Page after page,
26
after
years of
page,
doing that.
after page after page, so that I know, because when I run across a name or a word I can't pronounce, I can find out.
Right.
And so if somebody, Malagabagabi or whatever, I will have that name down so that, first of all, I don't offend them or their parents who came to see their kid play.
Right.
So all those things, all that I went through in radio, right?
Yeah.
To prepare for news and talk and all that went into my preparation for being the public address announcer.
That reminds me of that skit by Key and Peele where they have the name Sequarius Jackson. You know, these names you've never seen, but you've never seen before.
I heard that. It's brilliant.
It's brilliant. You know, the other thing that you have that you run into as somebody in the stadium is you do it in this format the whole season, and then playoffs come, and you can't do the same thing during the playoffs. You can't say first down.
Used to be.
You can do it now?
For the longest time, the other teams would complain that my first down Montana cry was and
cheerful of the home team of the team,
supporting the home team like you should.
It was biased in favor of the home team. Well, duh. So
now everybody does it.
So what I did was I went, instead of going first down, I would go, and that's a first down, and then the crowd would go, Montana.
Yeah, right.
Peter,
so we got him.
Wait a second. So now we're jumping around a little bit. That's 26 years ago.
All right.
But married in 1980, a couple of milestone moments in your career. When are the kiddos born?
Okay, my son Luke was born in 19. Well, I was married in 1980.
Right.
And Luke is now 40.
Wow.
So he came on a few years later, and then my daughter
83.
was born after that, and
Jenna.
So yes, and Jenna, and she is now married to a wonderful man, David Linskog, and they're all going to be here for the Thursday night deal,
right?
And they're all going to be here for the game. So
that's exciting.
They have never heard me. The Linskogs have never heard me do PA for the
Really?
Are you
games.
kidding?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So
Well, so wait a second. So keep Arnie off to you. Yes.
I was going to say. So you've covered every Grizz home game for 26 years.
Yeah, I've never missed a single game.
Do people come to you to ask you, handicap the game? Who's going to win? Who's not? No, they don't.
No,
because you're an observer of human nature, and you're watching these games every week,
Well,
and you know the names of all the players and the coaches.
Let's put it this way: I am just as big a fan as any person sitting out in that.
Sure.
Right. But the cool thing is, I am standing literally about 40 feet above the 37-yard line. They have the big number 37 right there.
Yeah.
That's where I stand, and I got a view of both ends of the stadium. And it has been an incredible privilege to do that.
Is there any one game that you stands out above all the others?
Oh, heavens, yes. Every time we beat the snot out of the Cats. But I will say the App State game in the snow.
Yes, I remember that one.
And the South Dakota State game when they were up by like 30 points.
Right at half.
Right.
And
so I have to tell you a story about that.
Mark Mariani had that 100-yard punt return for a touchdown. That was the stick that lit the dynamite, the match that lit the dynamite, and the Grizz went on to win big.
Yes. Well, I got to tell you something about that. I'll interrupt for a second. Just saw Mark here for the Hall of Fame induction. He was just inducted into the Hall of Fame. A blue pony from Haver.
Right.
Tennis
player.
Who had number 100 on the Grizz. He was a walk-on, got number 100, didn't play, and all that kind of stuff. He was a student of mine when I taught at the university.
Wow.
He gave me the game ball from the South Dakota State game.
Seriously?
I have that game ball.
Really?
Arnie, thanks for everything.
Wow.
And when he came back for the Hall of Fame, he has a 4-year-old son. He has a 2-year-old daughter. His 4-year-old son's name is Maverick. Maverick Mariani.
Okay.
And I said, I was sitting at home. I said, who am I going to give this ball to? Who's it going to mean the most to? So I went to the Hall of Fame induction. I said, Mark, I've been shepherding this ball since 2000. I think it was 13 or 12.
Right.
And I said, I want to give it back to you, and I want you to give it to your son so you can always tell him a story. Because every time Mark appears anyway, they show that clip where he gets the ball and runs down, and he gets 2 touchdown catches, and they win the game.
Right.
And he actually had a tear in his eye. He says, the only game ball I don't have.
Wow.
Oh, my God. Did he remember that he gave it to you?
Yes, he did. And he hugged me. He had a tear
Oh,
in his
man.
eye.
That's
I said,
beautiful.
Arnie,
well,
that's
this is
awesome.
more meaningful to me,
Yeah.
giving it back to you than
Yeah.
maybe even you giving it to me. I mean, it was
How
meaningful
sweet.
both ways. But
That's awesome.
But that is the game. That's the game I remember the most. I was sitting in the stands. How are we going to come back from 30 points down at half against now the team is the national, they've won 29 straight or 30 straight games.
Right.
They're the number one team in and he comes back and they win it.
And this is one of your moments. So, question: do you feel like is your notoriety equal parts KGVO or Grizz PA announcer, or a little bit of both?
Well, to be honest with you,
And a little bit of both.
I don't get paid.
I know. I told you I need to negotiate for you. This is terrible.
to do the games.
You don't?
They give me a couple of tickets,
Oh,
a
that's
couple of
payment.
season tickets, right? And so and I would do it for nothing. I would absolutely do it for nothing. It is a
Privilege.
huge love of my life. It's a labor of love. And all the one you should, if you want to see what chaos is really like, all right, just come up into that booth while we're doing the game, because I have three guys on my right who are yelling and shouting at each other, because one of them's a timekeeper, one of them helps with the clock, another one works with the refs, right, and they're yelling back and forth, they're doing their thing. I've got John Wall, who is no relation,
right,
but he's my spotter.
Basketball
He's the best
player.
spotter in the history of the world. Anyway, makes me sound really good. He's feeding me all the names and of the stuff of the players, and I'm yelling and talking loud and reading and all this. And then we've got our Nick, our manager up there, directing all this stuff. Then we've got a music guy, and then we've got 3 or 4 guys on the computer in the back, right? And they're all it is a cacaphony.
Really, it's
in there.
crazy.
Yeah, and it's nuts, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
But
It's
out
amazing.
of all of that, you're legendary. I mean, I only know 2 stadium announcers.
Right.
Bob Shepard for
Bob
the Yankees.
Shepard, right.
He used to
Number.
say, and they had he did his version of what you do. He used to say, and batting first, a second, playing shortstop, number 1, Derek Jeter. And they would go, Jeter.
He would pronounce the last name twice.
Right, he had his shtick.
Mark Bavaro.
Yeah,
Bavaro.
Yeah. So that was his thing.
Yeah.
And you're the other one. I mean, what other?
He was a Giants announcer too.
Yeah.
So wait, Peter. So we're taping this show before the Grizz Cat game.
Yes.
Tell me what you like about what you're seeing with this year's Grizz, and what are some predictions?
Well, let me tell you, I think our defense is unbelievable. I think they are very, very solid. I think our linebacking core is as good as I've ever seen, and these guys play with their hair like their hair is on fire. Mm-hmm. And I love Alex Gubner. Right. I love his passion and his joy.
Number 99, right?
When he's out there, basically crushing people to the ground. I love the passion that these young men portray on the field, and I think our quarterback, he is tall, he is strong, and he's very difficult to bring down.
Yeah.
Right. So.
That's So no predictions.
I don't make predictions.
No, I'll tell you.
are in the news game.
I
That's
like
true.
to watch the
best
game play out.
One word response I've heard was Bobby Houck was doing his press conference after the game, and they said to him, "How does it feel playing for the Big Sky Championship?" And he said, "Normal."
Good answer.
I thought that was a great answer.
Good answer.
I like it.
Great answer for that.
So we've spanned your career. We've talked about your roots in music, your roots in radio, your roots in announcing as the PA. When you're not doing any of this stuff, what do you enjoy doing? What's the private Peter Wall enjoy doing?
Don't tell anybody.
Okay.
I read.
Well, good.
I love to read. I love C.S. Lewis. I love a lot of those science fiction authors. I'm a sponge. I just read. I love to read.
Do you mix it between nonfiction and fiction?
Yeah,
you have a good mix?
it drives my wife crazy because I don't travel well, right? I don't vacation. I'm probably the most boring person you will ever meet because I don't really have any hobbies.
Yes, you do, though. You run, you exercise, He does.
He's in good shape. He's in great shape for a guy.
Shape.
I've seen a lot of guys in the studio who can't fit through the door. So, remember Steve Dahl in Chicago, that famous radio broadcaster?
But Peter, that's true though. You do run, you do exercise, right?
When I can,
and you read.
Yes, I read.
How about family and family?
My son lives here in Missoula. My daughter's in Seattle. And we try to get together with Luke at least once or twice a week to have dinner,
nice.
All that kind of stuff. So he's a single guy, so ladies.
Yeah, Peter's been doing that since I've known him. He's trying to get his son married.
And you're still involved in the church and church.
Yes,
activity.
very involved. Yeah, very much involved.
And tell us a little bit. This is going to be post your 50th. Event, 50th celebration.
This is actually in the middle of my 51st year.
Really?
Oh, good.
Oh, good. So
we're ahead.
We're way ahead of the game.
We're behind.
But the proceeds from the event at the Hilton Garden Inn are going to a charity.
Fight crime, invest in kids. And
those are two things that you're passionate about.
Yes, I have an enormous appreciation and respect for anybody that puts on the uniform and the badge and goes out there and doesn't know what they're going to experience on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it brings a tear to my eye when I think about what these guys have gone through, men and women have gone through. I think about Trooper Wade Palmer, what he went through, and I think about one of the moments I think I might talk about on Thursday was, if you remember the Miracle Baby.
Yeah.
Story from Lolo about the guy who had ingested meth, and he took his girlfriend's son up into the woods. And you got to remember, there are hundreds of thousands of acres of forest land up there.
Right.
And I don't know what I did with the baby. He's up there somewhere. So the Forest Service guys and the Sheriff's Department guys, they did this massive search, and two of them were walking up a forest trail, and they found an abandoned car there. They find the guy's abandoned car, but they looked around. They didn't see the baby anyway. Baby wasn't in the car seat or anything. And they had turned around, and they were beginning to walk back down, and they heard a muffled cry.
Oh my God!
Yeah, well,
and they went back, and underneath the man had buried the child underneath a brush and sticks and weeds and stuff. And they picked him up, and he was in this filthy little onesie, but he was wailing his little heart out.
Right.
And
that's a fantastic story. I mean,
that's
it gets
an amazing
you, right?
story.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then when I wrote about it, and this is what I'm so passionate about news. Okay,
right.
I love doing the news, and so when I reported on that, I wrote in the story where they had the picture of all these guys getting their awards. Sorry, this is going to get to me.
That's okay.
This little boy had a room full of godfathers.
Wow.
All in uniform.
Wow.
And I found out just this week, this little guy is now like 5 years old.
Yeah.
And is doing very well. He's somewhere here in western Montana. I have no idea. I don't know what his name is. I don't want to know what his name is. He's just a cool little kid, and it was one of the
heartwarming story.
Yeah, it was one of the great stories that I've had the pleasure and privilege to cover for KGVO.
Well, you take it very seriously.
Yes.
Your commitment to the community, and that's important to you.
So,
it always has.
You also touched on something which I think is important for our listeners to know.
Yeah.
You write stories.
I do.
On top of just reading something somebody else wrote, or even something you wrote, you write news stories.
I write all my own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
you're a
that
writer
takes-
and a deliverer.
I mean, that takes a talent.
Yeah.
Where'd you learn that?
You just pick it up. But like I say, I read a lot.
Right.
And my mother was a school teacher in addition to being a DI sergeant in the Marine Corps. But I basically learned by doing. I went to the University of Montana for 1 year in 1971 after I got out of high school.
Right.
I was 17 years old, way too young to go to college.
Right.
But my mom said, "Look, your dad's paying for your tuition, so go." Right.
Yeah.
And so I went. I was totally depressed. I didn't know a soul. This is long before they had people leading you by the hand to help you get your classes and all that.
Here's the campus. Good luck to you.
Right. Have fun, son. And so I bombed out. I totally bombed out. But I was going to be a journalism major. right?
So you became a journalist.
But that went in the wayside, and then I became involved in butteries and all that, and got into my career.
Who over the years you've interviewed a ton of different people?
Yes.
Who are the?
I haven't told you about Paul Harvey.
Yeah, I was going to say who's
Good day.
My second question was going to be who's your greatest influence, but talk to us. Well, first of all, start with that. Who's your greatest influence?
My greatest influence, two of them, Ray Nicolai and Bill Schwanke.
Got it. So local guys,
yes.
the local news,
both local guys.
And your favorite guests that you've spoken to over the years, different.
My goodness, the Angel Flight guys brought a couple of little youngsters in that they would fly back and forth to Seattle for free.
Oh, sure.
And the spina bifida and things like that. Yeah. Those are the true heroes
of the community
in my book.
Sure.
Those are the people that I just absolutely love getting on the air and letting our listeners have a chance to see them, through whatever, and through the internet, and also by, like you say, the theater of the mind, and And then we had the very first ever transgender prima ballerina in this studio from Great Britain as part of the Ballet Beyond Borders deal, right? And so that was an amazing thing.
That's a one of a kind experience, right?
and what a delightful person.
Yeah.
And so heard the story about 10 years old, realized I'm in the wrong body, right? And had the surgery and then became this prima ballerina, the very first ever transgender ballerina, or prima ballerina.
Well, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. Our guest is the inimitable, the legend, Peter Christian, celebrating 50 years in broadcasting.
51 and a half.
51. Oh, yeah, right. 51 and a half. Back after this. Arnie, we are back with our guest, Peter Christian.
So 51 and a half counting.
Yes.
What's the future look like for
The future
looks
like for me, I have no idea. I love what I'm doing. I realize I can't do it forever, right? God has helped my voice stay.
It's very vibrant and youthful.
The timbre is still what it used to be. So as long as that keeps going, I hope that I will have an employer like Scott who will because remember, Town Square Media is about more than radio. It's about digital. It's about all sorts of other things that enhance what radio is all about.
Sure.
I'm not real good at that stuff, but because of the patience of the people here, they help me get through it and allow me to do what I love to do.
Right, which is the most wildly popular radio show in the state of Montana.
Anyway, yeah.
And for our listeners, tell us about your show. I mean, what time is it? For people who are not familiar with it.
Well, I used to do the Morning News Express, which is now Montana Morning, and Ace Sour Wine is doing that now.
Right.
And then we do Talkback. Talkback is Montana's only live interactive radio talk show, right? And or at least Missoula, before Aaron Flint came along. And so we quite literally have people, you quite never know. You never know what you're going to get, when you tune in. If you look at that calendar over there, Nick Christensen is a sensational manager and producer.
Right.
And he books all those guests, arranges them, and feeds me all sorts of good information so that I can ask good questions, and then people call in, and then it becomes their show.
So they can listen to it every day at what time?
We're on from 8 to 10. 8 a.m. to 10 a.m.
And listen, I'm biased, but this is my favorite show.
It is my favorite show, too.
Talkback. I listen. We have a lot of shows. We have a lot of babies here.
We even do this show, but that's my favorite show.
But my favorite show is Talkback because I think the immediacy and the interactivity between with the community kind of meeting here at the radio station, there's nothing better. Radio is at its best when that happens and happens well, and you do it great.
And the most important thing you miss is that Peter is the perfect host. He doesn't interject himself in a way that
yes.
What do you mean? That diverts the conversation into some partisan, experience. I mean, lots of people that host talk show want to talk more than the guests.
But let's put it this way: I try to treat people the way I would want to be treated if I was a guest on the show.
Right.
And
you do a good job of that. An excellent job.
I think there's something in the Bible about that.
Yeah.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Right.
You've been a delightful guest. This is fun, turning the tables on you.
Yes.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed it very much.
I'm looking forward to the next 50 years.
I've lived through the experience. Thanks,
and
guys.
rose above it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
All
gentlemen.
right, Arnie, I'll see you next week.
See you next week, Scott.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichman@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO.